Electromagnetic fields have been argued to work, microwave electromagnetic fields have been argued to work entirely by heating in terms of health effects. And what my talk says is that that's incorrect, that they produce health effects via VGCC, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. Activation, okay? So, and this is a little bit about my background. I got my bachelor's degree at Johns Hopkins. I actually got it in physics. Took a lot of chemistry and biology classes. Got a PhD in biochemistry and genetics from Caltech. I'm professor emeritus of biochemistry and basic medical sciences at Washington State University. I've received 7 international honors for my work in environmental medicine, and these are all on chemical work, not on electrical work. I published a paper last year on how electromagnetic fields, which are usually abbreviated EMFs, impact the cells of our bodies, and that's going to be pretty central to what I'm talking about there. This paper was just honored for inclusion as a global medical discovery paper, so that means it's, according to this site, one of the top medical publications of 2013. I have given already 4 professional talks on this topic, and by the end of next month I will...
What was the journal that was published in, did you say?
It was the Journal of Cellular and Molecular Medicine.
Thank you.
And I've got the citation on one of these slides. Now, U.S. and international safety standards for microwave radiation don't directly apply to devices that fall within the control of the state of Oregon, but because they have often been used to claim safety for state-controlled devices, they're relevant to the discussion here. And so these safety standards are entirely based, as I said before, on the assumption that the only thing that's important, at least, that microwave EMFs can do is to heat things, like heating foods in your microwave oven. And therefore, they assume that if heating is minimal, you don't have to worry about health effects. And that's the basic, that is the basic assumption behind all these safety standards. In fact, there's no basis for that, and the reason that we know that is, first of all, there are some 20,000 papers in the scientific literature showing biological effects where there should be none according to the safety standards. Okay, so there's a huge literature reporting all kinds of changes that shouldn't exist according to the safety standards. Secondly, it's been known for over 30 years that pulse fields are more biologically active than non-pulse fields, even when they don't produce any more heating, or they even produce less heating than the non-pulse fields. And so we know from that that, again, heating is not the crucial thing. And then now we know what the actual main mechanism is, which is what that paper was about. Now let me just say there's a lot of complexities to this thing. Don't worry about the complexities. What I'm trying to do is give you a feeling for how all this stuff kind of fits together, okay? What my paper showed, and let me just say this was entirely other people's data that was kind of hiding in the literature, okay, is that there were 24 studies which showed that electromagnetic fields produce biological responses through the activation of what are called voltage-gated calcium channels, VGCCs, okay? And the reason that we know that is because if you use a calcium channel blocker, which is a drug that's specific to block these channels, it blocks the effects. And so in 24 studies, we know that, that this is the way the biological response was produced. Now these are not all just on microwaves. There are a number of different kinds of EMF fields that were involved. And so this seems to be a very broad kind of mechanism.
They were all non-ionizing radiation.
They're all non-ionizing radiation, that's correct. And they're all low energy photons in these. And so okay, so what happens then is when you have these channels, so you have these channels, they're in the plasma membrane of the cells. And when they get activated, they open up and calcium flows into the cell. And it's the excess calcium in the cell, the intracellular calcium, that is responsible for most, if not all, of the biological responses. Okay? So we have a pathway then that produces this big increase in intracellular calcium. And a lot of the effects we know from increased intracellular calcium go through activation of these two enzymes. These are nitric oxide synthases that are calcium dependent. Okay, so they have very low activity unless you've got a lot of calcium in the cell. And when the calcium goes into the cell, you get a big elevation of nitric oxide. Okay, now nitric oxide, it turns out, can work along two different pathways in the body. And again, I apologize for the complexities, but basically this is the pathway, there's the normal physiological pathway of action of nitric oxide. So this is the way, when nitric oxide is doing good things in the body, this is the way it works. It works through this signaling pathway, okay? And this is the way in which nitric oxide works in diseases. And so it combines with this guy to form peroxynitrite, which is a potent oxidant, produces oxidative stress, and produces all kinds of changes in the body which are involved in various kinds of diseases. Okay, so both of these are relevant. Now it turns out, and this is going to be sort of the simple take-home lesson of my talk, is that this pathway over here is the way in which therapeutic effects of microwaves works. And there are therapeutic effects of microwaves, and they occur under certain specific conditions, and it works along this pathway. And what I'm going to say is this pathway is involved in most, but not quite all, of the pathophysiological effects, the damaging effects. Okay.
And
so,
question?
Yeah.
So is the bifurcation due solely to the presence or a certain level of the superoxide?
It's due to that, and also the level I mean, as most of these things, is very complex. But yes, basically, it depends on superoxide, and it depends also on how much nitric oxide you have, because basically you have to have a lot of nitric oxide and a lot of superoxide both. Okay. I mean, I could spend.
We're talking multiple
cell.
All right, good enough. Let you go.
Yeah,
go.
Right.
You have a neuroscientist there.
It's actually very complex, but and this is something I've been studying for the last 15 years, and so I probably know more than I should. Okay. Now, what I have in this slide is a series of well-documented effects by microwave EMF exposures that can be understood as being caused by the mechanism shown on the previous slide. Okay, so these are all extremely well documented changes, with one exception I'll mention in a minute. So we know that these things occur, and they can all be explained by that previous slide. Okay, so you have oxidative stress, which we've already talked about. You have breaks in both single-strand and double-strand DNA. You get cancer, and those involve the breaks in the DNA, but also certain other things. And so you get male and female infertility, and let me just say, male infertility has been studied a lot more than female infertility. It's a whole lot easier to study, but there's reason to think that both occur. You have a breakdown of the blood-brain barrier, and what that does is when you get a breakdown of the blood-brain barrier, it makes the brain more susceptible to both toxic chemicals and also infectious agents, and so that's obviously important. You have a loss of melatonin, which is a hormone that controls sleep, and consequently you get sleep disruption. And then you have the therapeutic effects. And so all of these can be explained by that pathway that we just talked about. There are other effects that occur. There are many changes in brain function that have been reported.
Okay.
These are very diverse.
Can I ask a question at this point? To what extent are these things dose dependent? And by dose in this case, it means the intensity, I assume the intensity of, and therefore the distance from the source and a variety of...
Well, they're all dose dependent. These all occur within current safety standards. Okay, So what that tells you is that the safety standards are inadequate in terms of all of these things. And I'm not saying that industry won't contest the reality of these things, but that's what the literature says. Okay, and so I've gone through a lot of this literature carefully, and some of it not so carefully, but these things are all been reported over and over and over again. By multiple groups and so forth. Anyway, there are changes in brain function. We really don't understand what the significance of that is, biological significance yet. I mean, but there are a lot of these VGCCs in the brain, and they're very important in the brain. So it's not surprising that you see changes in brain function. There are also changes in electrical control of the heart, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And those include tachycardia, rapid heartbeat, arrhythmia, and arrhythmia can lead to sudden cardiac death. So this is a significant issue that one might be concerned about. So in general, then, we have multiple studies showing that each of these responses have been reported to be produced by microwave radiation exposures of various sorts. There may be arguments about how strong the evidence is, and I'm sure there will be, but there should be no question there is substantial evidence. None of these can be explained by heating. Okay. And they can all be explained by this VGCC activation. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about autism. I'm working on a paper on autism. And there are a number of researchers who have argued that the autism epidemic, and I'm talking specifically about the epidemic, may be caused primarily by microwave EMFs. And the main argument for that is that there's a tremendous parallelism between this huge increase in autism and the increase in EMF exposures that we've had over the last 35 years. But there are also some other types of evidence, and I'm just going to have time to share one of those types of evidence, okay? So one of the predictions of this, if this is true, and that's the question, if this is largely caused by microwave EMF exposures, one of the predictions is that autism should be caused by excessive activity of the VGCCs, right? And it turns out we know that that's true, okay? And the reason we know this is true is because there's a mutation in the main VGCC in the brain. It's got this kind of designation. You don't need to worry about that. And it causes what's called Timothy syndrome. This is a rare mutation in that gene that makes it hyperactive. So it makes it hyperactive, and it causes Timothy syndrome. And the symptoms of Timothy syndrome are autism, and in fact the whole autism spectrum, and also cardiac changes that we talked about before, tachycardia, arrhythmia, sudden cardiac death. It causes both of them. And in fact, these people with Timothy syndrome don't live very long. They typically die age 4, 5, 6, 7. The oldest one lived to be 13, I think. So they don't, and they die of sudden cardiac death. Okay. So and in fact, you can take this mutant gene, it's actually a derivative of the gene, and put it into the mouse. And when you do that, you get classic autism symptoms in the mouse. Okay, so there's no question that this thing is causing autism. Now, there's a whole bunch of other types of evidence which argue that the autism epidemic may be caused by microwave EMS, and we don't have time to talk about those. In summary, these things are all things that could not possibly occur if the current safety standards are correct. They're all very serious health issues. We can substantially improve the safety of many of these devices that are putting out these fields relatively easily, I think. But I do have serious concerns about the specifics, which I think many people are concerned about, Wi-Fi in the schools and so-called smart meters, and also baby monitors, which are currently very poorly designed. Those, I think, really need serious changes. So you have a difficult challenge, and I want to thank you for working on this. Thank you very much.